There's my minerals. Okay, I'll get my chat. All right, so yesterday we reviewed our calcium and our phosphorus because it had been about a week since we had gone over that material. We went over our potassium. Oops. We went over our potassium. We talked about the two primary roles of potassium are the muscle contraction and the nerve transmission. We talked a little yesterday also about the sodium-potassium pump. So you guys are going to be so super smart for Ms. Smith when she gets into the nervous system, and you are already going to know a little bit about the sodium-potassium pump. Potassium deficiency, this is going to be far more likely than an excess. And we've been discussing the common clinical signs. Deficiency across the board, even if it doesn't say it on the slide. Oops. Sorry, didn't have my pen activated. Get activated. Anorexia. This is going to be, with the exception of one mineral, this is going to be across the board deficiency. You're going to have anorexia. A lot of these other clinical signs have direct dealings with the fact that potassium has a role in allowing our bodies to use energy-producing nutrients. Now remember, the mineral itself is not producing nutrients, not producing energy rather. The minerals are non-energy producing, but they are needed for our bodies to use the carbohydrates, the fats, and the proteins. And so without energy, we don't grow. We have lethargy. We are going to have locomotive problems, not only for the lack of energy, but because our muscles don't contract and our nerves are not transmitting impulses. We're going to have low potassium in the blood. So a lot of this is kind of common sensey. Okay, use your critical thinking, kind of think things through. We talked yesterday about how, honestly, nutritionally, potassium excess is not going to happen. You're not going to be able to eat enough nutrition like bananas to really give yourself a major excess clinical sign. However, we did discuss yesterday about the perfect murder and how we can see some potassium excesses primarily with supplementation. You could see the paresis, which we talked about was like the Bell's palsy, which is like a slight or incomplete paralysis, and it's going to cause the slow heart rate, which is what we used to our advantage when we were committing murder. We started talking about sodium and chloride, remembering that these are two separate minerals. Sodium is a mineral and chloride is a mineral. Chloride, yes, is most likely bound to sodium, but chloride can also be bound to other minerals as well, like potassium chloride, iodine chloride. So it just so happens that the most common form of sodium is going to be bound and bonded with chloride. So we kind of say it as one quick word. It's NaCl. So when you're a doctor, this is a common fluid therapy that we use in our animals because you can get depleted in the sodium, which is going to cause all kinds of big issues. And so your doctor may say, go grab me a bag of NaCl. And that's what he's referring to. He's referring to sodium chloride. It's going to maintain our osmotic pressure. So this is what helps keep our blood pressure, keeps our fluids stable. Sodium transmits nerve impulses. And this goes right back into the sodium-potassium pump that we were talking about. How you have sodium on the outside of your nerve cell, potassium on the inside. Some stimulus happens. Sodium floods to the inside, potassium floods to the outside, and then we have the special magic door that moves them back to their normal places. It is this that allows the electrical transmission of that impulse to go to the next nerve. And if something happens, if I don't have sodium to flood into the cell to change the charge, the message stops. It just stops. And then it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go any further. Sodium is also really important for the excretion of waste. Now, what I mean by this is, yes, it's going to be helpful for our kidney function, etc. But the other really important, like if we think about it, is these two connected together. Sodium, oh, no worries, Claire, I got you. Hang on, guys, let me get Claire. Claire, where are you? There you are. So we have a couple of different ways that we get rid of waste. We pee it out, we poop it out. Well, don't both of these take water? Yep. And so this regulation of water metabolism, keeping it, excreting it, that all falls primarily to sodium and chloride. And so when you're urinating it out, that's because sodium allowed you to. When you're having a good poop, right? It's not diarrhea, it's not constipated, it's just a nice, solid, satisfying poop. That's, you can thank your colon, number one, and sodium chloride, number two. So you have that lovely, satisfying poo. Those are the two little guys you should be thanking. Deficiency, we can't regulate our water. Well, yeah, that's its primary job, isn't it? And then all of the rest of this has specifically, again, directly related to the fact that sodium chloride allows our body to use those energy producing nutrients. If we don't have energy, we don't grow. We have fatigue. We can't use protein, so we don't have nice hair. And the common one, as I said, star beside it, every single mineral, deficiency except for one, anorexia. The excess, you know what I want. You know what I want. Oh, that sounded creepy. You know what I want you to do? No, that sounded even more creepy. I want you to act it out for me. All right, so for the sodium chloride excess, we are all at Ghetto McDonald's. You are all eating your golden deliciousness. Okay, show for me the first clinical sign. Thirst. Show for me the second clinical sign. Pruritus. Show for me the third clinical sign. Oh, that was a good face on me. That was good constipation face, Miss Huff. Hi, look, this is the one thing I love about Zoom. Miss Huff, that was great. High five. Bam. Just high five myself. It's been a long week, guys. All right, so after constipation. Good seizure, Mona. Good seizure, Bernadette. All right, so after we have the seizure, oh, you guys missed one. Hypertension, and now death. Nice. So we got thirst, pruritus, constipation, seizures, hypertension, and death. Just go through these clinical signs, act them out, and this will definitely help with you being able to recall them. All right, let me. Ananias has come into the room. I see you. Well, I don't see you, but I see that you are here. Oh, I want to pause this for use that time to get that message across. All right, so from sodium chloride, now we're going into some new stuff. Here we have magnesium. And the letter designation for magnesium is Mg. Now, where I say it is a component of bone, here's the distinction that I want to make. Okay, so some of you are probably asking yourselves, why the holy heck do I have this picture down here? And this is not just because I love this movie. This is one of my all-time favorite Christmas movies. Christmas is my favorite time of year of all time. My house, okay, not in a weird way, but I have a tiny mantle tree that I leave up all year long. It is decorated and I dust it. It's not like, oh, she just didn't take it down after Christmas. No, I dust it and I rearrange my ornaments, has little lights on it, and I have my stockings all year round, but I do wash them, you know, they collect dust. That's about it. I am convinced you cannot be upset or blue or sad if you are looking at a Christmas tree. It can't happen. It doesn't happen. So my all-time favorite Christmas movie is A Christmas Story. And some of you, if you have not seen it, I'm going to need you to get out of my class right now. Just go and then go watch it right now.
Bye. See you later.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, this analogy will work for any movie. In any movie, I'm going to be using The Christmas Story. You have your primary actors, you have your primary major characters. So for A Christmas Story, it was obviously Ralphie. You could even argue the father. Honestly, you could even argue the lamp. Those major characters, those are going to be compared to calcium and phosphorus in the bone formation. Magnesium is the secondary character. Here we have the little brother. You have the mother. I like the little brother. I love this picture. He was the kid, you know, I can't put my arms down. So the question then is, A Christmas Story, or whatever movie you're thinking of, could A Christmas Story have been made without Ralphie? No, it could not. Could it have been made without the father? Probably not. Could A Christmas Story have been made without the little brother? Sure, it could. But would it have been the same movie? No. Bam. That's magnesium's role in bone formation. Can I make bone without it? Sure, yeah, I can. But is it going to have the same integrity? Absolutely not. That's magnesium's role. I can't make bone without calcium, and I cannot make bone without phosphorus. I can make it without magnesium, but it's not going to have the same integrity. We're going to have magnesium as one of our neurotransmitters. Remember I drew out yesterday the neuron, and we had the little terminal button. We had different things that flood across the gap, the social distancing gap of our neurons to send different messages. Well, magnesium happens to be one of those things. It's going to activate several enzymes. That's basically a fancy way of saying it's helping us use our energy-producing nutrients. Specifically right here, put a little star beside that, because that would be a fabulous test question for the minerals test. What two energy-producing nutrients does magnesium help with metabolization of? All right, so what happens if I don't have it? Well, there we go. Number one. You guys are all getting a point on that one. Some other things that we're going to see is muscle weakness. Now, why? Well, this is going to go right into the nerve transmission. If I don't have magnesium, I'm either not able to transmit the nerve impulses, or it's going to be a much weaker impulse. And that's going to cause my muscles not to contract to their greatest potential. And that eventually is going to cause weakness. Oh gosh. I think some of you guys might be magnesium deficient. Hyperirritability is one of the symptoms. So you're not just irritable, you're hyper irritable. Convulsions, that's going to be, again, with that neuromuscular component. You're going to have a little bit of vomiting. That's mainly going to have to do with the metabolization of those energy producing nutrients. If I don't have magnesium, I can't use them. And even if I'm taking them in, I can't use them. Got to get rid of them somehow. I'm going to have decreased mineralization of my bone. Well, duh. Magnesium is a component of bone. And if I don't have it, as I said, the bone is not going to have the same integrity. This one down here is probably the mama jamba, because you're not coming back from this one. Your aorta, so here we have our heart. We all know the typical drawing of our heart. Out here we have our aorta coming out of our left ventricle. And actually, if I want to be, so here's actually my heart. And the aorta has an arch that comes out kind of like this. And here's my carotid arteries. And then it goes down like this. And it goes all the way down through your chest, through your abdomen, and every single blood vessel in your entire body somehow branches off of this. So this aorta has tremendous pressure behind it. It has the highest blood pressure of any blood vessel in your body. And the aorta, just like every other blood vessel, has to be elastic. It has to be able to contract and expand and contract and expand. And that's your pulse. So imagine now if I have an area anywhere that is now calcified, which is just another word for it. That doesn't mean calcium. It just means I have now mineral deposits. And this area right here is not elastic. That's a problem, because as the rest of the aorta is contracting and expanding, this one tiny area is not, which means I'm going to end up rupturing right here, and this whole piece is going to blow out. You'll be dead before you hit the floor. And that's not, I'm not being sarcastic. If you have an aortic aneurysm that blows due to this mineralization, dead before you hit the floor. Here's a picture. So here I have, so the heart would have been here. Here's the aortic arch. Here we've got our carotid arteries feeding the brain, feeding the head. We have our going down to the body. And then right here, you can see in this box, right here, it's magnified. That almost looks like a trachea, doesn't it? Isn't that weird? You can see, it really does. Look, we can actually see what appears to be almost like tracheal hyaline cartilage rings. But that ain't no hyaline cartilage, because that ain't no trachea. That's mineralization of the aorta, and you can see, bam, blowout. And that would be why this aorta is sitting on a table outside of the thing that used to own it. Can't have your aortic artery sitting on a table and still have an alive thing. Okay, you can't live without it.
Oh, is it like a lot of forced blood or something that causes, like what causes that?
Causes it to blow out?
Yes, ma'am.
So essentially, this area right here, this whole thing is no longer able to contract and expand. And what that does is it causes a higher pressure immediately after it and just blows it out.
I don't know if you said and I missed it, but is it always after the arch that happens, or is that just it happened to be where you drew it and it happened to be where this picture is?
So it's always going to happen somewhere after this arch, but it can happen anywhere. So this would actually be, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Sure. This would be actually somewhere very high up, cranial to the chest in the thoracic cavity. We can travel it all the way down into the abdomen though, and anywhere chest or abdomen, anywhere along this aorta can develop this mineralization and blow out. Excess. Well, excess magnesium has to be evacuated from the body, similar to another mineral we discussed. Darn it. Sorry, my chat is not working. I messed everything up. There we go. So we talked about another mineral called phosphorus. And remember, phosphorus was one that was evacuated from the body via the urinary system. And we could get it accumulating. Remember, our little molecules were banging into each other, and the bladder was laying down mucus, and they were getting all sticky, and then they were sticking together, and that caused a urolith. Magnesium is another one that can cause bladder stones. In fact, it's a pretty common one. And it's a stone called a triple phosphate, a magnesium ammonium phosphate crystal. And they're pretty common. Ow. So where we get excess macro mineral intake, generally, because our commercial diets are complete and balanced, and they have the exact correct amount for the species that they are trying to feed. Not only the species, but the life stage as well. Because obviously, think about it, growing puppies. What kind of volume am I looking at? Well, increased volume, because we're going to have higher volumes of energy producing nutrients. We're going to need the minerals to help metabolize those to produce the energy needed to grow and develop. So our commercial diets really do contain everything needed. Where we start seeing issues is with supplementation. The owners randomly decide, hey, Fluffy needs a supplement. Or even worse, they get a larger giant breed puppy. Oh my God, we see this so often in like Great Danes, Irish Wolfhounds, you know, the big ginormous giant breeds. Because they're like, I got this Great Dane puppy and I want him to grow like a pony. I want to ride him to work. I don't know why he took on that voice. And so they know that calcium builds strong bones. And so they just start ramming minerals and ramming supplements down this puppy's throat, hoping that it's going to cause him to grow even bigger. That's when we're going to start to see some excess issues. And oh my goodness, guys, just a little aside. So not being serious, but my sister and I were looking at puppies. She is not a pet person. She has two little birds, two little birds that are like the light of her life. She's not a dog person. She's not a cat person. But she thought it might be nice for my dad to have a little companion, something to get him out of the house, you know, go for a little walk every now. Now that he's retired, all he does is sleep, and we're really worried about him. So we were conversing, and you guys have all done behavior. We want something small, but not too small. We want something that's not going to be super yappy and barky, because he's very hearing sensitive since his, although honestly, any of those bobblehead dogs, like your Bostons, your Pugs, your Frenchies, your English, they're all going to be super expensive because most of them have to be born by C-section. Oh, so anyway, but you guys,
Isn't there a way, I'm not sure because I've never done it, but I've been told that like you can like kind of like set like alerts for shelters whenever they get certain types of dogs, and it'll like let you know or something along those lines.
you absolutely can. And my best friend is the head animal caretaker at the SPCA. So I have an in. Here's the problem with that though, is especially when you're dealing with, again, the bobble-headed dogs, your Bostons, your Frenchies, is that they have so many genetic predispositions for conditions like elongated soft palate, stenotic nares, all the things you guys learned about. They have the retrograded piggy tail, skin issues, eye issues, joint issues. You really get what you pay for with those guys. And so, and honestly, I told my sister, Dad does not need a dog. He can borrow Poppy anytime he wants. He absolutely desperately loves Poppy. He can borrow Poppy anytime he wants. The whole reason I got into that whole diatribe right there was because this. That triggered me. That triggered. I'm triggered. I'm triggered. So your purebred enthusiasts, your hobbyists, your breeders, they're going to be the ones that are coming into the clinic and that have been over supplementing or telling the people that purchase the dogs to over supplement. This is just a fun slide for snacks, kind of giving you an idea of why feeding your animals off the table can cause obesity. If Poppy, who is a little less than 10 pounds, she's about 7 pounds, if I feed her one potato chip, just one chip, that's the equivalent of 1/2 of a Big Mac, calorically. So one chip, nothing for me, but it's the exact same thing for me to feed her one chip and me to eat 1/2 of a Big Mac. If I give her 1 tiny ounce of cheddar cheese, today is cheese day. Guess what I'm not giving my dogs? Not giving them cheese. This is crazy, guys. Look at this. If I eat 3.5 Big Macs, that is the same number of calories for the size as giving her 1 small cube of cheese. And the thing is, we don't think about that because I'm eating chips. I'm giving them chips. I eat some chips. I give them another chip. I eat a chip. I give them another chip. Suddenly, they've eaten the caloric equivalent of like 15 Big Macs. And then we wonder why our pets are fat. All right, so we've completed now. Those were all of the macro minerals, guys. Potassium, calcium, magnesium, sodium, chloride, and phosphorus. Those are all of the macro minerals. Now we're going to get ourselves into some micro minerals. Oh, absolutely. Marissa, did you want a screenshot of this? Is that what you wanted? I'm so sorry. I didn't see that.
I never thought about that.
Hey, let me erase all the ink. There you go.
I know this is off topic, but you know how you've been having us do that Purina stuff, the diet stuff? They sent me a cup.
Yes, that was the
I
part.
was like, oh snap, I got me a new drinking cup. It's all tall and stuff.
I didn't tell you that, but for every single module you collect, they send you some swag.
Dig it. I got a package yesterday and I was like, I know dang well I ain't ordered nothing else. And then opened it and it was a cup. And I kind of felt some type, I almost shared the tear a little bit, but I felt so happy about myself that I got a cup.
You should. That's very prideful.
It's the surprise that
Way to
makes it
go,
awesome.
Simona.
So, well done. I was wondering who would get the first swag. And so for all of you, as you are completing these certificates, and I'm not going to tell you what they send you, you're going to have to just wait and see. But
Do we send you all of them in the one? Because I just saw the one that said 101 on Moodle. Because I finished 2. I just need my last one.
Here's what I'm going to need to look into, and I will let you know on tomorrow. I went, sorry, my chair is stuck. I have tile floor, and every now and then it gets stuck in a groove. I went ahead and corrected so that you guys can see your percentages now. But the problem is that I think it's factoring in a 0 for those certificates. And so some of you have like 19%. I'm like, what is happening?
I have a 37. I was like, what the heck?
I think what's happening is because it is factoring in a 0 for that certificate. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to go in and play with it and see if I can fix it. But if I can't, I'm going to shut it down and I will reopen it at the end of term for you to turn all 3 of them in at the same time. And that way you have a better idea of what grades you have. Because right now it's artificially low because it's factoring in a 0.
Okay.
So just hang on to them and I will announce on tomorrow. All right, so our micro minerals also have another name known as trace minerals. They are known as micro or trace minerals because they are present in much smaller quantities within the body, which means we need them in much smaller quantities in our diets. So micro, small, means that we need them in much smaller quantities in our diet. So the first one is this guy. This is zinc, and he's designated by a Z. Sorry, I'm in America now. Z, ZN, Z. I say it as Z, ZN. And zinc is really, honestly, he's kind of underrated. He does so much stuff. He activates 200 at least that we know of other enzymes. He helps us use our protein and our carbs. Put a star beside that. Again, another great question. Which 2 of the 3 energy producing nutrients does zinc assist in the metabolization of? Skin and wound healing. This one you actually may have been aware of. That's why I've got this picture on this PowerPoint. For those of you that are mums, you have the diaper rash cream. This one, I just thought it was a funny title, the baby anti-monkey butt cream. I thought that was funny. But you have the common brands like I think Desitin is one of them. I don't know. Babies. But the common ingredient, the major ingredient is, guess what? Zinc chloride.
That's also like in your sunblock and things like that, right?
I was just about to mention that. For the sunblock has zinc because it helps with skin and wound healing. Huh? I didn't get that. What?
I think I was saying I could see oxide or something. I've been looking into it because I've heard about the chemicals and the reefs, so I've been reading a lot about that.
Yeah, so it's the exact same thing though. Zinc oxide is in diaper cream. So if you can't find it, get some. I know it sounds gross, but hey, it doesn't matter. No one else knows. Get diaper cream. Smear it on your face, especially after you get a little bit of sun. Get a little bit of sunburn. Smear. Don't put aloe on yourself. Don't do it. Aloe will take the heat, but what happens is it applies aloe. It creates a barrier. And although it takes the feeling of the heat, it will actually stop the heat from leaving and you'll cause even more damage. Johnson & Johnson gives you cancer, Brittany? What?
There's a huge lawsuit that a lot of their products were carcinogenic and causing cancer.
Oh, well, geez.
Yeah, I remember
okay.
that. A few years ago, I remember that.
So stay away from the Johnson & Johnson products. But zinc, go get some generic, cheap diaper rash cream. Smear it. If you watch the surfers, and the surfers wear the colorful smear on their nose, and sometimes they'll wear the colorful smears here on their cheekbones, it's because your nose and your cheekbones are the 2 primary things that are going to get sunburned first. They're protrusions off your face. And what they've smeared is colorful zinc chloride.
Oh, no.
So if you have a burn, if you have a sunburn, if you have something like that, bam, zinc. Put zinc on it. It's also going to help with your immune system. So on the outside, it helps with the healing. On the inside, it helps with the healing. It's going to help your fetuses to develop. and regulate the growth rate. So holy smokes, I mean, considering this is something that we only really think about when we go to the beach and we're like, oh yeah, even then you're probably not thinking about it unless you're a surfer and you're putting it on your face. But zinc, holy smokes, so important. We only need a little bit, but so important. And I really do recommend keeping, if you don't have children, keeping some generic diaper rash cream, because it's wonderful if you have a scrape, you know, because it doesn't matter if it gets in. Diaper rash cream is meant to be very, very good for those things. You're putting it on an anus, which is one of the most sensitive parts of the body. You're putting it on the outside of a baby's vagina. You're putting it on a scrotum. I mean, these are, guys, the most sensitive parts of the body. If zinc diaper rash cream is okay for that, it's okay to put on a scrape. It's okay to put on your face. If I have a deficiency, bam, look at that. Even if they're micro, anorexia. That's the common one. Some of the other more interesting, though, clinical signs of a zinc deficiency. Alopecia, hair loss. If I don't lose the hair, I'm going to lose the color in the hair. It's going to become depigmented. It's going to turn gray. See, gray hair is not gray. Gray hair is clear. Gray hair has no pigmentation. So if you have some gray hairs, they are just color free. You just have to put the color back into them. Conjunctivitis. So here I have some pictures. Here, this is an eyeball, just in case you weren't oriented. This is the conjunctiva. This is my conjunctiva. And conjunctivitis is where it gets irritated. So this is a picture of a pretty severe conjunctivitis. Now, do what?
Is that a chicken's eye?
No, it is not. It is, I don't know. I don't know what it is, honestly. It's inflamed. Actually, looking at it, it might be a chicken. No, I think this is all matted fur. I know it looks like feathers, but it's all matted fur because the eye has been draining.
In my head, it was a guinea pig of some sort, but I don't know. That's just what I thought of when I saw it.
Okay. It's whatever you want it to be. It's, let your imagination go wild. It's a unicorn.
I feel like we had this conversation similar yesterday with Miss Smith when she talked about the pancreas and how it looked like brisket. And I was like, huh? And I was like, all I see is meatloaf. I don't know about you, but I see meatloaf.
I think it looks like a seahorse.
No, I'm seeing rabbits right now. I don't know.
Whatever you want. I'm okay with it. Okay, but here's the deal. Let me give you a little, this is just my tech tip. How do I know? How do I know if conjunctivitis is something systemic happening in the body, meaning something that is happening inside the body versus a trauma? Because you can have trauma. I might have a fever, absolutely. Zinc deficiency or nutritional deficiency, I might not. So here's what we're looking at. If it is systemic, which eye is it going to affect?
Both?
Bam. Bilateral. If it's traumatic, it's most likely going to be unilateral. Like, for example, poor Maisie. Maisie, she's so small. She's so low to the ground that when my grass in the summer gets too high, it's almost inevitable. Every year, she gets whapped in the eye with a grass frond. No, Case, go ahead. Go ahead, absolutely. She's whapped in the eye with a grass frond. And then she comes in and she's winking at me. And then I do a fluorescein stain, see the ulcer, put her on some eye meds. Meh. Unilateral, though, tells me it's trauma. It's not something systemic because that's going to be bilateral. excess. You can't really overdose yourself on zinc. Squeeze out the whole tube, although this is weird. I'm not sure why you would want to do this, but go ahead and squeeze out that whole tube of diaper rash cream and just slather it all over your body. Not going to hurt you. Where we do see excess in zinc is in foreign bodies, specifically puppies, because cats can get foreign bodies. However, dogs are much more likely. They're going to eat pennies. We say that pennies are made of copper, and they actually are not. They used to be, but now copper pennies would be far too expensive, and they would cost more than a penny. Actually, pennies do cost more than a penny to make. It's ridiculous that this society still uses pennies. I'm just saying. Canada did away with pennies 10 years ago. There's no such thing as a penny. They do a rounding system. Neosporin. So the one thing about Neosporin is great, but it's not mineral-based. Neosporin is bacitracin, polymyxin, and what is the other one? Anyway, but it can also contain hydrocortisone, which is a steroid. And so that has some different reactions in the body. It's great for fighting infection, not great, not as, natural as just applying a zinc. So pennies. Pennies are made of zinc, and they only have a very, very thin coating of copper on them. And when when hopefully soon we get back to school, I actually have some pennies that we've dissolved the zinc and left the copper, and it's thinner than a piece of tissue paper. So what happens is you get these puppies that are eating the change, they're eating the pennies, and the zinc is dissolving in their stomach. The zinc is being uploaded into the blood, and they can develop toxicity. Now, the range of symptoms is really pretty diverse. So and because it is so rare, I didn't even put it on here for testable material, but for those of you that are like, I need to know all the things, I've only in my life ever seen one zinc excess case. It was a golden retriever puppy. I'll never forget him as long as I live. He was one of those ginormous, he was 8 weeks old and his head was like this big, giant floof ball. And his owner was not bad looking either. So the dog's name was Haas, because he's giant. The paws on him were like the size of a bear cub. It was crazy. And he was just the stupid golden rather. Stupid golden, let me somebody to pet me. And I had been the technician that was dealing with all of his puppy vaccines. So I had been seeing him on a pretty regular basis. Again, that was by design because the owner was incredibly good looking.
I was just going to ask, was that by accident or
by
accident?
There has to be some perk to being head tech. I'm the one that has to fill in for shifts when people don't show up. I'm the one that has to deal with all of the fractious animals when everyone else is too afraid to do it. I need me a perk. Mama wants some eye candy. So the minute that the receptionists came back with, butterflies and daisies floating around their heads, I'm like, I'll take that. So super nice guy though. So he calls me up and he says, hey, Haas is acting weird. I was like, okay, bring him in. Choked myself up there. Brings him in. Haas just melts on the table. And usually this dog is like chewing and he's untying my shoe and he's like a typical golden puppy. And he just kind of slumps down and he just kind of looks at me like, I don't feel good. So normal temperature, gums, everything fine, eyes, everything looks fine. And I'm like, okay, well, I did a fecal examination. And I'm like, okay. So here's what happened. It was very just fortuitous. My doctor had recently gotten a digital radiograph machine. And he was taking radiographs of literally everything that was not nailed down. Cell phones. Because what do boys do when they get a new toy? They play with it. And this, what do boys do when they buy an $80,000 toy? You gotta know they're gonna play with it. And so literally every animal that came into the clinic got radiographs. We didn't charge them for it, but, oh, he's here for a Bordetella vaccine. We should probably go ahead and do some rads. Oh, he's here for you know, a little bit of eye discharge. Let's go ahead and do some skull radiographs. Make sure we don't have anything. He's ridiculous, but it happens. So Haas, we take him back. We do some radiographs, and holy shnikey, we actually found something. He had a belly full of change. Like, here's how much change. And this is why, other than the fact that the owner was probably one of the most beautiful people I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, ethereal, good looks. And the puppy was nice. There was so much change, and it had been relatively recent, that if you put a stethoscope up to the puppy's abdomen and just gave him a little jiggle. Yes, Michaela, gave him a little, no, we're not shaking the baby. We're just giving a little jiggle. You could hear it jingling inside the stomach. That's how much was in there. So we're like, oh dear. So we sent him to the specialist because we did not have, we could have just cut the dog open, done a laparotomy, laparo, abdomen, otomy, surgical incision into, but that is a really hard surgery on an adult, never mind a puppy. So we sent him to Gulf Coast where they had the the camera that goes down the esophagus. Oh my God, I can't remember the word for it. Anyway, seriously, I couldn't remember endoscope. Brittany, oh my God, I'm having a stroke.
I thought that maybe you knew some other name for it that I didn't know, and that like, and that's what you were trying to remember.
Oh my God. Oh my, seriously, I gotta check my smile, make sure I'm not having a stroke. Yeah, an endoscope. Jesus Christ, how did you not remember it? I blame you. We're blaming him. An endoscope, yes. Wow, that was the biggest brain fart I've ever had in my life. But it has these little tweezers on it, and so they could feed it down and non-traumatically remove the change. And this dog had, I don't even remember how much they said he had. Now, the nickels and the dimes and the quick, it wasn't just pennies, it was nickels and dimes and quarters as well. Those don't cause as much damage. The zinc will. And so what ends up happening is the first sign is lethargy. They just have a general malaise. You may get some diarrhea, you may get some vomiting, but ultimately what will happen is as they move into the small intestine, they'll begin to ulcerate the small intestines. And then you'll end up with potentially perforated ulcerations. So kind of important that you get them removed pretty quickly. And it turned out what had happened was he had a container in his house somewhere. And he would just throw his loose change into this container. But the container was on the floor. And Haas was apparently just going in and helping himself. It's like little kids have to put pennies in their mouth. Same thing with dogs. So that's the zinc excess and what to expect. Yeah, Marissa, it's probably because my brain is all filled with him. Oh, he was beautiful. All right, so the next micro mineral is going to be Manganese, Mn. This, put a little star. Another great multiple choice question. Which two energy producing nutrients does manganese help with the metabolization of? Manganese is also going to help. I've got something in my eye. Manganese is also going to help with bone development. So we have calcium, phosphorus, and magnesium are the primary, phosphorus and calcium are the primary components. Magnesium, lesser so, still important. Manganese is kind of what arranges it. Manganese is what puts it all together. Reproduction, gonna help with cell membranes. Maze, what are you doing? Maze, Maze, go lay down. Go. So if I have a deficiency, well, I'm not gonna, do you guys need, I'm seeing faces. Do you need me to go back for a sec? All right, so deficiency, we're not really gonna see a manganese deficiency. Commercial pet foods being what they are, at the very worst, you might see some decreased growth, some decreased reproductive, but ultimately we really don't see this in practice. Excess, you can't overdose yourself on manganese. It's relatively non-toxic. This picture has nothing to do with the manganese excess. I just liked the picture. I am counting down in my head, 3, 2, 1, and this cat is about to slap the ever-loving snot out of this dog. Selenium, oh, selenium. Selenium, Se, has a lot of really important functions, but it also happens to be my arch nemesis. I'll explain. So selenium helps with immune function, and the way that it does this is it interacts with vitamin E. Remember, vitamin E is a fat-soluble vitamin. It is it is fat-soluble. It is a biological antioxidant, and it helps bolster and improve immunity health. Well, selenium's role in all of that is to help your body utilize vitamin E. So these two are hinged together. Their jobs are dependent on each other. That's pretty much all it does. It's just going to help your body utilize vitamin E, and then vitamin E in turn is going to perform the functions of an antioxidant as well as bolster your immune system. So if you don't have it, some pretty significant things can happen. Muscular dystrophy. I'm going to talk about this. What muscular dystrophy is where we have a malfunction in the ability of our muscles to contract. And what ends up happening is we get specifically our extremities go malformed. And in fact, these digigrade, so here, digigrade pups, right? Because animals, these quadrupeds are digigrade. They will then become plantigrade. So if you look at this foot right here, let me move this. This part right here, that is the equivalent of the heel of my foot. So this is in the animals, we call it the hock. But if you're looking and comparing this to your own foot, I'm not putting my foot up on the camera. So look at your own foot. You have your own foot to look at. This, however, is your heel. And so this is the plantar surface of the foot. but usually they have it up to where they're only walking on the toes. And what this dystrophy does, we have this complex. We're not going into detail. You don't need to know. But we have this dystrophin, which is helping with the actin in myosin. It's a binding protein. And so when you have muscular dystrophy, basically what that is we have now a loss of integrity here, and that causes this particular very evident stance for the muscular dystrophy. Reproductive failure across the board, we've already talked about that. This one's kind of interesting, subcutaneous edema. Well, what is edema? Edema is fluid accumulation within the tissue. Can be localized. Like, for example, after I've been sitting here, because on Wednesdays and Thursdays, my schedule's kind of weird. Mondays and Tuesdays, I teach just radiology. Wednesdays and Thursdays, I teach radiology and then nutrition. And then Fridays, I only teach nutrition. But on Wednesdays and Thursdays, it means I'm sitting in this chair, because it's just an office chair, right? Thank God it's at least a little bit comfy. Oh, excuse me. Whew. Excuse me. I'm sitting in this chair from like 7:15, other than getting up and going to the bathroom in between class, until about noon. And so at the end of at noon, when I get up and do a little walk around, my feet are super swollen. I don't know if you guys are having the same problem, but even sitting for 2 hours in nutrition, because I'm sitting right now I tend to cross my legs when I sit. Well, that occludes blood flow. That causes circulatory issue and allows fluid to leak into the surrounding tissue. And that's why my feet are swollen at the end of the class. That would be an example. Now, obviously not because of this, but that is an example of localized subcutaneous edema. I have fluid leaking into the tissues of my feet. You can also have generalized edema, where all of the extremities are affected. And so deficiency can cause this clinical sign. And then finally, selenium not only helps the immunity to work, but it is also pretty good for your kidneys. And if I don't have selenium, I can actually cause some mineralization in the kidneys, meaning that I'm going to develop what would be the human equivalent of kidney stones. All right, so here is why selenium is my arch nemesis. So many, many years ago, once upon a time in a land far, far away, actually it wasn't that far away, it was just up in Cyprus. So back when I was in private practice, now this is way back when, I was probably in my 20s at this point. I had some health things, I was doing some supplements, taking some nutritional supplements. Selenium was one of the supplements that I was taking because my body was having a really hard time utilizing vitamin E, and I was having some immunocompromise. So I started taking selenium, but just like every other person on the planet, I did not do my homework. And I did not realize that there were two different types of selenium. There is a blushing and a non-blushing. And basically the difference between these two selenium supplements is simply the vehicle. Okay, so selenium, you're not taking selenium. Basically, when you take a supplement, when you're taking a vitamin or a 1 a day or whatever, these minerals are put into a little car. And that little car drives them where they need to go. It's like a little nutrient Uber. And we call it the vehicle. Some people can be allergic to certain vehicles. the blushing versus the non-blushing just refers to what kind of car is transporting the molecule. Well, I had gone to the Walgreens, and if you take supplements, sometimes they'll have these specials, on the certain brands. You buy 3 bottles, get 1 free. So I was running low on my selenium, so I picked up a bottle of selenium. Now, at the time, I was taking about 25, 26 different supplements. And so from my house to the my work, it was about an hour and 20-minute commute. And so I have my little Dixie cup, eat my supplements. I have a couple of Diet Cokes on the way. Well, the problem was I had picked up the wrong selenium. I had picked up the blushing and not the non-blushing. And so I've been taking it for a couple of days, and the problem was it got loaded. Okay, because you have a loading dose that your body has to then maintain. I ended up having all of the selenium excess symptoms, and I've put them in this order because this is the order that I got them. So I'm going to tell you now so that when you are being tested or you're trying to think of selenium excess clinical signs, just like ghetto McDonald's, you can think of Miss Huff's crappy day. So I'm about 3/4 of the way to work. I'm driving this little car, and I was about 3/4, a little more than 3/4 of the way. And that's when the vomiting spasm hit. So I have my Diet Coke, I'm taking not a problem. Now, when I say a vomiting spasm, this is different than a vomit. A vomit you can feel coming. Your stomach kind of clenches, you start to hypersalivate, you're like, uh-oh. And you have to run to the toilet. A vomiting spasm, there's no warning. There's no warning. And so I'm driving, and I'm just bopping along, kind of half asleep on my way to work. And I feel a burp. I've been drinking Diet Coke. Those great morning Diet Cokes. Those of you that drink soda in the morning, those satisfying morning Diet Coke burps. So I'm like, oh, got a burp. So I go, and I go to burp, and I painted the inside of the windshield. Yeah. So I'm like, and so you kind of wipe off the inside of the windshield, and it's dripping down into the vents. I ended up had to sell the car. I had to get rid of the car because the vomit went down into the vents, and every time I turned the heat on for the winter, all you could smell was like cooked Diet Coke vomit. Luckily, that's all I'd had to eat. I hadn't eaten anything, so all it was Diet Coke. So I'm like, oh my God, that's weird. I mean, and I did. I could not open my mouth wide enough to get it out. So I'm closer to work than I am to home. And I'm feeling not good at this point. So I get to work, park my car. Symptom number 2 hits me. So I go to get out of my car, and it is like I am 7 tequila shots in, and it is still early in the evening. And so I can't walk. I get on all fours, and I'm like on crawling, covered in vomit up to the front. And this is, thank God it was early. I was an opener. And so the only people there were my receptionists, who were kind of standing at the door looking at me like, what is happening right now? And I'm like, help me. So we get inside. I get up sit up against the wall. And they're like, oh my God, what is going on? Do we need to call 911? I'm like, no, I think, I don't know what's happening. And so my brain is racing. And that's when number 3 hit. This one was a little bit scary. When I say salivation, I'm not talking like, oh, I'm thinking of that hot client. Ooh, I'm thinking of Chipotle burrito. I'm talking Mastiff on a hot day, where they brought me a towel because all I could do was hold my mouth open because I was salivating so much I couldn't swallow it. So I had to just like let it drain out of my mouth. This gave me and kind of led into the dyspnea. And that one was terrifying. It's if any of you have a little asthma, most people who live in Houston have a wee bit of asthma. You feel no matter how deep you take a breath, it doesn't feel like it's enough. That's what I was feeling. And so now I'm hyperventilating. I'm trying to breathe fuller and fuller, deeper and deeper, and it just doesn't feel like it's enough. And I can, in fact, tell you one of the few times in my life that I did not want Chipotle burrito. So I'm sitting there as covered in vomit, can't stand up, salivating like a mastiff on a hot day, having trouble breathing. I'm like, oh my God, so what could this be? The other thing that I got that was not on this list was I started breaking out in these massive hives, like bright red hives all over my face, all over my body, and my lips swole up like huge. We're talking like botched lip filler surgery, huge. If you've ever looked, there's a Reddit site called Botched Surgery. Oh my God, it's horrific. They fill their lips so full, they look like a prolapsed anus. They're crazy. And so then I realized the only thing different that I had done was this new selenium. So we, looked it up. Now this was the age of probably slightly before or after dial-up. So we're looking up the internet. It's taking like half an hour to look it up on the internet because we didn't have fast internet back then. And yes, all of these symptoms. And so I had already vomited up the selenium. So I just sat for, a while. Thankfully, my receptionists were able to help me out. And the symptoms began to abate. And I was able to, and I did my shift. I'm not going to go home. Did my shift. This is the one that showed up about 2 days later. And it was so bad. Now, I didn't smell it, but it was so bad, I was not allowed to do rooms. Because they said it smelled like whenever I talked, I had eaten like raw cloves of garlic. It was that significant. It was like coming out of my skin. This final one was more of a veterinary excess, and I have seen one patient who was being supplemented by the owner, soft-coated Wheaten Terrier, and what ended up happening, they got all these symptoms as well, but all their nails popped off. All of their nails just popped off, and so they were left with nothing but the quick, and so we had to treat them for that. So when I'm testing you over selenium excess, think about Miss Huff driving to work, painting the steering wheel, crawling up the front walkway, mastiff on a hot day, not wanting no Chipotle, trouble breathing, and then ate raw garlic, and then think of the dog with the nail loss. So that is my pain and my shame for your entertainment.
I go to it. So what was it exactly that you had so I know not to get it? Because that sounds so terrible.
It was so terrible. It was awful. And so it was a plain Jane selenium. It wasn't a one a day. It wasn't a multivitamin. It was just a selenium supplement. But back then they had blushing and non-blushing. And so you want to make sure that you get the non-blushing. And I think actually now all they make is non-blushing.
So what was the blushing for? That's the part I'm not understanding.
Where it says blushing and non-blushing, what that's referring to is the car that is transporting the selenium. So the blushing has a car that transports the selenium a little more efficiently, right? That car is a direct line, very efficient transporter. And so the blushing, being a more efficient transporter, was much more common. It was the vehicle, the car, that I had an allergic response to. It just so happened that an allergic response to the vehicle and a selenium excess, same clinical signs. The non-blushing simply refers to a different vehicle, but this vehicle is not quite as
The concentrate.
it's not that it's concentrated. Okay, think of it like this. You have your Uber where I call them up and they take me directly to my destination. And then you have your rideshare Uber, right? Where you pick up extra people, you get to your destination eventually, but it's not quite as efficient. That's what I'm talking about. The blushing is the direct Uber. The blushing is the direct Uber. The non-blushing is the rideshare Uber. It's gonna get there, but it's going to be not nearly as a direct route. And so that's why you would take the blushing. I happen to have an allergic response to that particular Uber. And that's why I had all of these clinical signs. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And then Casey, how did we treat the nail loss? That's a fabulous question. So what you have to do, because obviously now you have nerves that are exposed, right? You have nerves and blood supply. And so what you end up doing is you soak the feet in Epsom salts and you do wet to dry bandages. You just pad the feet as much as you can. You put as much soft gauze. You give pain medication. The animal was on Rimadyl, which is like the non-steroidal, supercharged Advil for dogs. We had him on a little bit of controlled substances just to take the edge off. But mainly what you want to do is just protect that very sensitive underlying quick. So we padded the feet, we soaked the feet in Epsom salts to keep away any infection, kept them bound. And then you just got to wait for the nails to grow back. All right. Iodine. Iodine. Iodine is the next micromineral. Iodine, the first thing I want you guys to think of when you think iodine is your thyroid. Your thyroid is in your throat and it regulates your metabolism. It regulates how efficiently does your body utilize the nutrients that you are taking in. Iodine and thyroid health, bam, hand in hand, finger in finger. So the minute you think iodine, I want you to think thyroid. It is the necessity for the production of these thyroid hormones. Now, I'm not going to make you write these down. It's just so you've heard it before. But you have thyroxine and triiodothyronine. That's how you say that. That's a fun word. It makes you sound super smart. This one is known as T3, hence the tri. This one is known as T4. And you're going to learn about T3 and T4 when you get into clinical pathology with Ms. Regalia next term. She's going to go into blood chemistries and she's going to talk to you all over thyroxine and triiodothyronine. So for right now, though, just know iodine is needed for the production of both of these.
I know it's not super important, but is this a subscript 3 and 4, or is this next to it?
Yeah. We're going to put a pin in that one.
Okay.
All right, so the iodine deficiency. I don't have enough iodine. One of the big, very apparent clinical signs is right here. This is a goiter. And so basically what a goiter is what's called hypertrophy or an over formation, and the thyroid just continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until you end up with like this big tube neck. If you've never seen a goiter, let me
My great grandma had one, and we were not allowed to talk about it when we were little because it was very, very big and it was right here on her neck. We were not
Yeah,
allowed to talk about it when we were little.
it's, oh, there's a ton on here. Let me get one. Let me get a good one. All right, let me do a screen share on this. Yeah, I mean, people, there we go. So right here, can you guys see my desktop? Do you guys see that I'm on the internet? Okay.
Yes.
So right here, actually, I don't even need this big. Right here, obviously this animal is deceased, but you can see here the way that the thyroid is. So if this is my trachea, right? This is now my trachea. The thyroid looks like a butterfly. And it's attached, it has these two broad glandular strips, and it's attached in the middle by a very thin band called the isthmus. It sounds like I'm lisping, doesn't it? Isthmus. This is my thyroid. This is my trachea as if I am facing you right now. This is how the thyroid, it kind of fits in behind the trachea. Now, obviously, my hands are very, very large compared to this bottle. This would be a goiter. This would be what's happening with a goiter. So what you're seeing right here and right here is the equivalent of my hands. Goiter.
So is a goiter like the enlargement of the thyroid gland, or just another, just another form, like another mass?
No,
near the
it's
thyroid
it's
gland?
actually an enlargement of the gland.
Oh, the thyroid gland itself.
Yes. Here is, oh, here's a picture of a lady. There's a goiter. Yeah. And the problem is, I know you're like, well, why don't you just remove it? Just take it out. The problem is it's now incorporated around the trachea. So there's no way to surgically remove it. So, but that's a goiter. They're not pleasant. And they're super self-conscious. I mean, the animals aren't. The animals don't know. But the people, yes, you're right, are very self-conscious. I was looking to see if I had another. There you go.
Once you get a goiter, is it reversible to like make it small again?
Nope. Nothing you can do. Now, you can, once you start developing the goiter, though, if it is because of the iodine deficiency, you can correct it nutritionally. Now, you're not going to make it go back to normal, but you will stop it from getting any bigger. We don't really see iodine deficiency really in animals or people. Animals, again, because of the commercial balancing of the nutrients. But we also are not quite as prone to see nutritional goiters in people because of deficiency, because everything has salt in it. Guess what? I know salt is sodium and chloride, but what is it? It's what? Iodized, meaning that it contains iodine. And so every time you put salt on your food, you're giving a little something something to your thyroid. All right, some of the other things that we might see with an iodine deficiency, you're gonna have fetal issues, just like with the others. You're gonna have, as I just showed you, enlarged glands, which will then lead into the goiter. Hair loss. This one, oh my goodness, you guys, I think some of you might have an iodine deficiency. because apathy is one of the symptoms. What is apathy? I don't care. No, that's actually what apathy is. So that's the answer. If I say to you, what is apathy? And you're like, I don't care. No, that's great. Good answer. Well done. Apathy is where you just, to be apathetic is where you just don't give a crap. Doesn't matter. Doesn't apply to me. Don't give a crap. This is what we are all fighting to try and avoid with this whole continued work and have school from home, is becoming apathetic. It gets very, very easy. Obviously not, hopefully, an iodine deficiency, but you now can have, every one of us has had, me included, had those mornings where you're just apathetic and you're like, I don't care. I'm just over it, done, don't care. That's apathy. We can have a thickening of the skin. This one's not very common. And of course, lethargy. Here's the the fabulous thing about iodine. Oh, picture, got ahead of myself. The excess is exactly the same. So this one, the excess symptoms are exactly the same as the deficiency symptoms. Now, iodine, as I said, super important for the thyroid. And the thyroid really does act kind of like a little sponge when it comes to iodine. No different than if you have a dry sponge, you put it under the faucet and it gathers the water. That's iodine in your thyroid gland. And so here's just another fun, just kind of a story about iodine. Who has a story about iodine? What? Yeah, I do. So where I grew up, when I was a small child, actually I grew up there. I didn't move to Houston until I was nearly 20. So I lived in a small town called Ajax, Ontario. You can look it up. And the way that the Ontario is set up, at least our part, is you have what's called the GTA, which is the Greater Toronto Area. And it's right in the middle. And then you have like spokes on a wheel. And you have these little lines of towns. And so my line was east of Toronto. And you just get on the highway and it's just a town, highway, town, highway, town. And it just is in the spokes of a wheel, with Toronto being in the central location. And so there's like Scarborough and Markham and Pickering and Ajax and Whitby and Oshawa, et cetera, et cetera. Well, Pickering, just west of us, was the town that housed one of the largest nuclear power plants in North America. Still there. They're actually going to be decommissioning it, I think, either next year or the year after. But it is there. And so what we would have to do, because our town was right next door, we were like 12 miles away, is we would go through nuclear meltdown drills in school. So where you guys, some of you would go through like tornado drills at school. Obviously, we all went through fire drills at school. This was different. There would be a different bell. And I'm now going to teach you guys how to save yourself from a nuclear disaster. Because I know they taught me. Here's what you need to do. Is you need to crawl under, preferably a wooden desk, and put your hands over your head, and then the nuclear waste just flows safely right over you. Who
That's
knew?
how it is when we have our blanket.
That's it?
That's it.
Stop, drop, and roll?
Yeah, it's duck and under your
Duck and
desk.
cover?
Duck and cover, but preferably under a small wooden desk. I don't know if the wood is important in the whole safety portion. So obviously ridiculous, but yeah, just find a wooden desk and crawl under it, Haley. You'll be saved. But here's why I'm bringing this up. Because our teacher had these little packet of candies that we all love. They're called Smarties. They're not the disgusting Smarties you Americans have. Disgusting. These are little candy-coated balls of milk chocolate that are just rainbows and unicorns, and you let them melt. They're amazing. And so we were trained when we got under our desks and we had put our hands over our head that we would all hold out our hand, and she would go around and put a candy in each of our hands. We would eat the candy, and that was our reward for going under the desk. But what was actually happening was they were conditioning us to take anything that she put in our hand. So what would have happened, she also had a big, every teacher did, a big bottle of iodine tablets. When you have the nuclear reactor, the nuclear meltdown, the danger is the radiation. And the thyroid is the gland that is one of the most susceptible to damage from radiation, because essentially what happens is the thyroid gland is just like a big sponge. And radiation will go into the thyroid, and the thyroid, just like gathering stuff in a sponge, radiation just gets in there, and then it can continue to do damage long term. That's why when we're doing radiographs, if you guys, when you get there, one of the PPE is a thyroid shield, because we want to protect your thyroid. But what can iodine do? So if there had been a nuclear reactor, she'd totally Pavloved us. So go like this. We now hold out our hand. Now she puts an iodine tablet in our hand. We're conditioned automatically to take it. What that does is it gives you one single massive dose of iodine. And that iodine now fills up in your thyroid. And basically now the sponge is full and there is no room for radiation to get in. And so that's what that one massive dose is. If any of you have watched, and if you haven't, it's fabulous. It's from last year, but on HBO, Chernobyl. Chernobyl was a mini series. It's incredible. It's amazing. But you'll notice as soon as the people realized, oh my God, this is radiation raining out of the sky, what did they do? They started immediately taking massive doses of iodine to protect the thyroid. And so, yeah, that's why they wear those. You have your lead vest, and then you have a collar that is separate that you put, and it protects your thyroid. And so we would take our iodine tablet, although honestly, we were 12 miles away. If we had a nuclear meltdown, wooden desk and an iodine tablet, probably not going to do that much. And then considering that when I was a teenager, we were most likely swimming in nuclear waste anyway, kind of explains the way that I am. There was this little inlet that when I was a teenager, we go down to illegal bonfires. Oh, Miss Huff was such a rogue. Miss Huff was just a ruffian.
Miss Huff, can I just ask you this?
Do what?
Can I ask you this? You know we all have that one kid. What happens is that one kid is allergic to the iodine?
We don't really have, I mean, could you be allergic to iodine? Sure. There's really no iodine allergy. I've never heard of it. Theoretically, could you?
My grandmother's allergic to iodine.
Well, then what she needs to do is she needs to just carry a thyroid shield with her at all times.
Yeah, because she's allergic to iodine. So anything with medication with iodine in it, she's like, yeah, she will die.
Well, that's good to know. And unfortunately, then she's gonna have thyroid problems due to the nuclear disaster. I'm sad to say.
She's that one kid in class.
That one kid in class.
Everybody have peanut candy, but since he's allergic to it.
Yeah, well, thankfully we never had to take the actual iodine tablets because there was never a meltdown. But there was this little inlet. Yeah, I am waiting on my superpowers, Jennifer. This little inlet that we go have illegal bonfires, because again, I was the black sheep of my family. And there was this little, it wasn't really a pond, it was because we lived right off Lake Ontario, so it was just this little inlet. And we go swimming, and we like to go swimming in there because there was this photoluminescent algae, and when you go in, you come out and the algae would be all over you, you're like, I'm a monster, and you'd be glowing with this algae. And it wasn't until many years later, actually after I moved here, that I realized that inlet was actually a runoff from the nuclear power plant. So, yeah, Miss Huff most likely was swimming in nuclear waste back in the 80s. So, there's your there's your iodine story for today. Look at that. What other instructor would have a story about iodine? Oh, come on. Iron, let's talk about it. Iron, the chemical symbol is Fe. Why is it not the letter I? Because, bam, iodine already took it. And the fact that iron is not its real name, is it? It's barium. This is also to prove to everyone. Actually, I just watched one of these movies the other day. I watched one of my all-time favorites, Iron Man Dose. In my opinion, the best Iron Man movie, Iron Man 2. That Black Widow scene when she's clearing out and Happy's fighting the one guy and he's like, I got him! And it pans over and there's like 30 other guys that she's just like a little spider monkey. Pew, 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 when she's swinging around. Iron Man should have been a woman. What? Let me prove it. Iron. Another word for man. Female. Iron Man. Dying if I'm lying. Come on. Come on.
You just cracked the system. Look at you.
Look at that. Iron
it took
Man.
me a second to click, and I was like, female? And I got it.
Female. Iron Man. Female. If I would drop it, except it would go on my computer. I'm miming dropping the mic. Iron Man. All right, so what does iron do for us? Well, iron is part of this. Hemoglobin. What is hemoglobin? So we have these little cells called red blood cells. You've probably already talked about these. I know we have. You have these little red blood cells. And we have a specially folded protein inside these red blood cells called hemoglobin. And what helps to make that folded protein is iron. Now, why do we need this folded protein? What exactly is this hemoglobin? Hemoglobin is what binds to oxygen and carbon dioxide. So a great way for us to think about hemoglobin is I'm going to draw what I envision hemoglobin to be.
18-wheeler.
I drew something you guys recognized. Go me. Go me. So this is a little 18-wheeler. This is your red blood cell. This whole thing is your red blood cell. This is the hemoglobin. It's the carrying capacity of the cell. And so we will send our little tanker truck, we'll send them to the cell, right? Because here I have oxygen, carrying a shipment of oxygen, and I'm going to travel that to the cell all over your body, and I'm going to drop off that oxygen to your cell. And the cell has a shipment, and I'm going to go ahead and pick up that shipment, fill up again. I'm going to take that shipment of carbon dioxide to where? The lungs, where I'm going to drop off the carbon dioxide, pick up another shipment of oxygen, turn and burn, go deliver to the cells. So without the hemoglobin, that's all I got. Can I transport anything on this truck? No, I cannot. And so that, for my little visual learners, now think, whenever we're talking about red blood cells, iron, and hemoglobin, this is the carrying capacity of the cell. This is the tanker truck part of the truck. And without it, you can't transport anything. And so, oh, let me go back. I should not have stopped that one share. So when you are iron deficient, oops, get my eraser, erase. So you are iron deficient. You can have iron deficiency for a multitude of reasons. The most common reason, one we don't talk about much, but the majority of us have had it happen, is with menstruation, blood loss. Because the blood that you're losing has iron, and you're now physically losing iron, and you're not able to replenish it fast enough. And so we actually, this is an interesting distinction. So we have this neat term, anemia. However, if we use our knowledge of medical terminology, what exactly does anemia mean? Without blood. This is not the definition of without iron. This is the definition specifically relating to without blood. So if I am, let's say I have the perfect amount of blood, but I am deficient in iron. I'm good on quantity. I'm good on the amount of blood, but I'm just deficient in iron. Why do I call an iron deficiency the same as a blood deficiency? Let me explain this to you. Erase. I now have 2 fleets of tanker trucks. All right, each of these fleets has 4 trucks in it. All right, so this fleet, I'm going to demonstrate true anemia. This is where we have a decreased volume or number of red blood cells. Those 2 trucks don't work. I've decreased the number of the fleet. That is a true definition of anemia. I am without blood cells. But here's why we call an iron deficiency anemia. I have the same number of trucks. None of my trucks are off. All of my trucks are working. But here, if I have an iron deficiency, guess what? I've reduced my carrying capacity. So each truck, although all 4 are working, I can only fill them up halfway. So let me look at the results here. How many total trucks am I transporting? I have 2 full working trucks. How many trucks can I transport stuff? Even though I have 4 trucks, I have the carrying capacity of 2 full trucks. So even though it's not technically without blood, it's without iron, the outcome is exactly the same. It doesn't really matter if I'm deficient in the number of cells or if I'm deficient in the carrying capacity of those cells. The outcome is the same. I am not transporting as much oxygen and I am not returning as much carbon dioxide. Does that make sense to everybody? Fabulous. Let's see here. All right. Tomorrow, get back into. Believe it or not, tomorrow we are going to be finishing up minerals. We've only got like 2 more minerals to go. And then we'll do a wee bit of review. I'm not going to set the minerals test until Monday, and here's why. I know that a few of you have makeup tests. I think I mentioned this yesterday, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to take those makeup tests over the weekend. So what I don't want to have happen is have you have to do a makeup test and a minerals test. So I'm keeping those of you that have makeups in mind. So those of you that have makeups, I am going to be sending you an email this afternoon letting you know when the test will be open. It'll be open on the weekend. For everybody else, and I will remind you, we're going to schedule a minerals test on Monday. It will open at 3. It will close at 7. And then tomorrow when we finish our minerals, we're going to start putting all of this knowledge to work. We're going to start looking at life stage feeding. What do puppies need different from adults, different from seniors? So we're going to, and I'll put the I don't have the life stage feeding PowerPoint up yet. I will be putting that up this afternoon. All right, so any comments, questions, concerns before?
I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
We have 2.5 weeks left until we are sophomores. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, my babies are growing up. Why do you want to leave me?
Power to the people.
Oh, you guys are all leaving me in 2 weeks. I don't get to see your faces anymore.
You don't teach us sophomore year? Oh, dang.
We can still have our after school.
Oh my God,
meetings.
yes, we're still gonna have our club meetings. For those of you that are interested, we have still been doing our Tuesday club meetings, but we've changed it into a podcast. And this week we discussed the Menendez brothers. It was hysterical. Next week we are gonna discuss Ed Gein.
And his crazy mom.
And his bat crap crazy mom. So if you're interested, go and look it up. Last podcast on the left. I think, what did we agree, Bernadette? It's a 3-part series?
Yeah, it's 3 parts. It starts, I think, 172. Yenny said a 174.
Yeah. So if you're interested, take a listen. We're going to be discussing episode 1 on Tuesday. Or just come in and yeah. So Britt, come on in. You don't even have to listen to the podcast. Come on in and just discuss, because he's one of the heavy hitters. He is definitely the heavy hitter. He's one of my favorite Eds. I love Ed Kemper and then some Ed Gein. Gotta love the Eds. Yeah. All right. So for the rest of you,
like what do you see?
Oh,
You're not gonna see sophomore.
Hang on one sec. I gotta go, guys. Someone's at my door.
Okay.
All right, Rob, I'll meet with you. Rob, you stick around.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, let me.
Miss Huff, did you see my message?
Yes. I can reach out to her.
Okay, thank you.
I can text her today.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome, sweetheart.
Have a good day.
You too, hon. All right, what is going on with you, my dearest heart?
Oh no.
What is happening?